Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God. Vice President Johnson, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chief Justice, President Eisenhower, Vice President Nixon, President Truman, Reverend clergy, fellow citizens. We observe today not a victory of party, but a celebration of freedom, symbolizing an end as well as a beginning, signifying renewal as well as change. For I have sworn before you and Almighty God the same solemn oath our forebears prescribed nearly a century and 3/4 ago. The world is very different now, for man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life. And yet the same revolutionary beliefs for which our forebears fought are still at issue around the globe. The belief that the rights of man come not from the generosity of the state, but from the hand of God. We dare not forget today
Este es el discurso de John F. Kennedy. Se puede extrapolar hacia los días y encaja perfectamente porque los mismos temas relacionados con la muerte de John F. Kennedy y Robert Kennedy son fuerzas que todavía se están enfrentando justo hoy. This particular streaming is specifically directed towards my niece, but I think that probably many youth would probably have the same questions that she has. Liz, Marie, I'm so proud of you. I am absolutely, I was proud of you before, but you writing to me really made me very happy. I wanna thank you because it tells me that you've been consistently watching my streaming even before you had these questions. As most people know, I've been doing this for years, decades. So I'm extremely proud of you for asking me these questions. I'm going to be as candid as I can in positions on any of these. I read it once, I haven't read it again. But because I was hacked this morning and a whole bunch of stuff was happening, and then I did a stream, and then I'm going to go one by one to answer each and every one of those. The ones that I can't, I will tell you that I can't. And look into the information. As you know, I've been a community activist for more than 30 years. I've been working with the LGBT community for easily more than 30 years. I was part of the AIDS Foundation in San Francisco. I was also, and I have always been, an environmentalist. I've been someone who's been very involved in community activism or I think the first protest that I participated in was George Bush's father, the first war in Iraq. And I think I want to thank Dee Dee, who at that time was my partner, and she taught me a lot. She really did. She's one of the smartest women general, smartest persons I've met in my life. And we shared really good ideas. Most of you know I'm from the Bronx. I was born and raised in the Bronx, and kind of that picture of me being from the Bronx is important because it kind of gives you a background. The Bronx in the 70s and in the 80s and the 90s was something very different from what it is today. So all of those things in my last couple of decades on the island have given me a spectrum of political awareness that I think I want to use in creating new ideas and new solutions. So Liz Marie is my cousin's daughter, and she has asked me several questions that I want to share with you today. And it's about me backing Trump. I think it's important because the first thing I want to make sure that is understood is that Trump wins with the Latino and the Black vote. Also, other what we will call minority communities. I don't like to use those terms, but that is the reality of what happened in these elections. And he won with the majority of the electoral votes and the majority of the popular vote, which means these are new times. The last 4 days, I just saw him. The reason why I started off with Robert Kennedy is because I just saw him sign the presidential document that will release the files on Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy, and who killed John F. Kennedy. I'm just like, wow. I mean, I'm 50 somewhat years old. You know, this happened in the 60s. All this stuff, all these assassinations, planned assassinations happen in a window of time that is coinciding precisely with a lot of investigation that I'm doing. It has to do with salsa and some project that I'm working on called the lynching of Ismael Rivera. It's a great project, but it has to do with the assassinations of and the deaths of people like John Lennon, Bob Marley, the death of Ismael Rivera and other people, Black Panthers, Young Lords, and all these people that were assassinated or died mysteriously in a window of time that's called the 60s and the 80s, and how all that stuff happened. So this is very important historically, what we're seeing now with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump, I said, has come to leave a historical footprint. He's been compared to George Washington, and I've compared him to people like Don Pedro Albizu Campos, Malcolm X, and John F. Kennedy, and others who took on the system. And because of that honesty, they were, some of them killed, some of them persecuted, some of them reputations destroyed, etc. So I'm going to read little by little what she wrote. Again, Liz Marie is my niece. And here's some of the stuff. And like I said, I'm very proud because when I read it, it just said to me that she has been paying attention to me, which is very honoring. Thank you for that. I'm sick, and so it is a little because I posted that I was going to do a live stream related to Trump haters. So I'm getting a lot of questions because I'm backing up. I've been backing up Trump for the last 6, 7, 8 months and working towards getting to translate whatever he's doing in arroz con habichuela. And because of that, I've been exposed. And because of who I am, people are finding contrast with that particular position because they don't expect it from me. I'm going to come back after these brief announcements, and we'll talk specifically of the questions that she's posted way back in it.
Washington, D.C. coming up on the 19th with us doing the tour. The tour, it's donation, anywhere between 25 and 35. The donation you can give us so we can do these projects and pay the cost and stuff like that. We're not looking to get rich or anything like that. By the way, $35 for a tour of 23, 24, ending up in Chinatown, starting off in Union Square, Union Station in Washington, D.C., and going through everything. You know, it's like a mile or maybe a mile and a half, almost 2 miles of walking with myself as a tour guide. I am a historian, you know that. I've written books and all this. I have other tours running in New York and other tours running in Puerto Rico.
Puedes hacer donaciones por PayPal. Este es un proyecto voluntario pero necesita ayuda económica para continuar. Usa las opciones en pantalla. Estaremos muy agradecidos. Bendiciones. Puedes hacer donaciones por PayPal. Este es un proyecto voluntario pero necesita ayuda económica para continuar. Usa las opciones en pantalla. Estaremos muy agradecidos. Bendiciones.
So this person has been helping us for the last few years. And he also installs lighting, solar lighting. So this is the Christmas special, 100 watts, 100 vatios. I think it's called $25, 2 for $40. I can tell you that a lot of the whole community where I live in Puerto Rico, one of the places that I live in Puerto Rico, has a lot of these houses, because of the instability of our electrical system, have installed these really functional and excellent lighting, and it's absolutely awesome. 787-941-9673, 787-941-9673. Majestic Design. She facilitates a lot of the stuff that we do in Puerto Rico. She helps us by letting us use her facilities. Majestic Design. She makes everything personalized products for businesses and individuals. Anything with cups, cards, web pages, clipboards, and a whole bunch of other stuff. You can find her on Instagram.
I have a dream.
On April 4, 1968, the world lost one of its greatest leaders, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., shot and killed in Memphis. But the question is, was it really just James Earl Ray, a convicted criminal acting alone? official story says it was the lone gunman, motivated by hate. But what if there's more to it? Could the FBI have been involved, wanting to silence King for his stance on Vietnam and his growing power? Or maybe the mafia, with ties to Memphis and business interests, had a reason to target him? Some believe Ray was just a patsy, set up to take the fall for a larger conspiracy. Could powerful figures have orchestrated his death? Despite all the investigations, the full truth about King's assassination remains a mystery. What do you think? Was it a lone gunman or something much bigger?
Until now. Oh, shit. That is incredible. The fact that we're watching this and being a part of history. All right. So again, I'm going to be specifically answering the questions that Liz Marie, my niece, has, precisely because I think that they are very important. I'm very privileged that she did ask me these questions. I'm going to start off by reading what she wrote. I'm sick. And so it's the little one. That's what I call her. And I have to work, so can't listen. I'm not a hater, more of a look at everything type of person. She's talking about me posting about the haters. I asked you something before and you didn't touch on it. Was Puerto Rico liberated 3 days ago? I'm sorry, I didn't see that post. And that's an answer that has something to do with, I said that Puerto Rico was going to be liberated on the 20th of January. It's because Donald Trump has been talking about decolonizing Puerto Rico. So I was being sarcastic initially when I wrote that, not because I don't think it's going to happen under Trump. I don't think it's going to happen day one. But I was being sarcastic when I said the 20th. I think that's what you're asking me. I really hope to see that as an independentista, a third generation independentista, someone who wants Puerto Rico to be decolonized, to be free, to be, and as it should be, a free nation. I hope to see that within the next 4 years. So that's the answer to that one. How do you feel about Trump removing sanctions against Israel, which is against your Free Palestine movement? Okay, that's a great question. Let me give you some background. So during the Biden years, we have seen devastating wars, Ukraine, Russia, Palestine, Israel. Everyone has censored the images. Everyone, what I mean by everyone is the social media and all the press has censored the images. There are ways to see certain images. There are places and people who are posting, and it's horrible, absolutely horrible. I've always been, I think I said, and I started off by saying that my first protest was against Papa Bush Iraqi war, the first one. I think it was called Desert Storm. And I was against it then. As a matter of fact, I still have newspaper clippings because I was really creating my historian personality back then. I still have these clippings. I still have them, literally. And it is a fact that the majority of the senators and representatives, the majority of the politicians in the US, and I am going to venture to say the world, have ties to the Netanyahu government ever since the Second World War. England created the state, didn't create, but created the space for the state of Israel. And this is something that a lot of people have conflicting information on. And it depends who you ask, right? and the conflicts and the hate and the bombarding each other, whether it be from the Palestinian Arab world or the rest of the countries that sponsor back up the U.S. I am absolutely against all war all the time. There's no reason for war today. So I'm a bit disappointed and disgusted. This is day 4. I'm already posting because part of my responsibility as someone who backed Trump's candidacy and presidency, and still do, by the way, is to make sure that my voice is heard even within this whole constant fluctuating information. So it is said that he signed off on Israeli occupiers because there was a law made during the Biden era. I don't know if it was a law or an amendment or negotiating between the U.S. and Netanyahu, where the occupiers or the settlers, as they're called, would not go stealing more territory from the Palestinian people. So what has been happening in the last years, decades, is that there's this group of people who steal other people's homes because they think, particularly Israelis, they're called occupiers, they're settlers, they go and use the military to scare people. People run, and then when they come back, there's an Israeli family living in their home that's probably been there for the last 200 years or 100 years and 3 generations in a Palestinian home. And now, because those Israeli people have been backing or are being backed by the military, that has been genocide to all of these other communities, Arab communities, Palestinian communities. It is impossible. One of the things that people have been asking is to protest against Airbnb because some of these people are stealing properties and then creating Airbnbs to rent them out. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So to answer that particular question, I think I am extremely disappointed. I think it's very saddening that Trump has agreed to it. I haven't read the details on it yet. There is no justification. And from my part, there is no backing to that particular event. I posted 11 points as to the reasons why I was backing up Trump. One of them was the stop of the genocide, the war. Apparently, that's something that's happened in a specific area in Gaza, because I just saw bombarding the northern part of Palestine. So it seems that the negotiation was you can stop killing here, but you can kill over there. And I'm just speculating. I don't have that information yet. But it isn't something I'm going to applaud. It is something that I'm going to criticize. So I'm absolutely not happy as to what it is that I know so far. Those removing the sanctions against the Israeli people who move into the Palestinian communities. I'm absolutely against it. What about the drug laws he just revoked, where prescription drugs, drug costs were negotiated for seniors on Medicaid and Medicare? I think there's a level of propaganda here when it comes to this. this kind of information has been used precisely to talk about that Trump is going to take away Social Security and Medicare and destroy the health system and uh, the Obamacare. During the campaign, he basically said that was the best of the options that were on the table. And two of the rallies that I went to, he repeated that. So this particular one about negotiating Medicaid and Medicare, I am going to read up on because I think it's part of the propaganda that has been going on. I don't know if you noticed, and I'm talking to Liz, that the last 4 days have been bombarded with Trump this, Trump that, and all the stuff that he has been signing. The only thing, like, for example, I just talked about the files of, MLK and Robert Kennedy, and that is something that should be applauded. But those are not the things that are being looped on. In the media, I think I said way back about 4 months ago that if Trump won, the protesters, remember the protesters, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Me Too movement, the defund the police, all of these movements, the George Floyd movements, that all of a sudden stopped when when Biden won. And nothing was solved because it stopped, not because they solved it. It stopped because people like me think they were instruments. They were being used. These protests were part of destabilizing the government, the Trump government, the end of the Trump government, for precisely what happened, the consequences of that, if he won or not won type of, look what's happening now at 4 days, and look at all this attacks that are coming from all of the media, because there's probably one or two medias nationwide in the US and then outside that are talking about Trump from an objective perspective. And then there's the Fox, and then there's every other media in the US where you don't know exactly what's happening. So there needs to be these signing off of all these laws. You need to go to different sources to read or download it and read up on it. I don't think I'll have enough time to read up on all of them because there's so many of them. He was just signing away a whole bunch of them. What is incredible to see is that during the last 4 years, we never saw a Biden working. We saw him eating and at the beach. But in the few times that he was in front of the media, he was basically reading off a script. So what you're seeing now is what we should have been seeing all along, people doing government. And what we're seeing now is that Trump all along was preparing precisely to win, to eventually do government, to eventually bring his project into action. It's admiring to see that kind of stuff, but that's not the question. So I'm thinking that this is propaganda. I'm thinking that this doesn't necessarily mean, I know you work in the health industry, so I'm gonna read up on this and how this is gonna really affect Medicare and Medicaid. But obviously, if it's gonna affect the old, that's an issue that I have problems with. His promise to all of us to bring down the cost. Okay, this is wonderful, to bring down the cost of groceries. And then weeks ago, telling us he can't really do that, but had no problem swearing he could before the election. Well, he's only been actually working the last 4 days, and before the election, he talked about bringing down the prices. And I just saw him the day before yesterday talking about it. And this is how it's supposed to going to be happening. Part of the reason why our cost of living and cost of everything that we consume is up, there's several, but there's one in particular, the cost of gasoline, the cost of energy, the cost of petróleo. So when he's talking about bringing down drill baby drill, which is according to what he's been saying, and it is understood that underneath the U.S. soil there's a whole bunch of crude oil that needs to be tapped, so we can use that to fill our reserves and use. The environmental discussions about whether or not this is going to do good or not, it's a bit hypocritical. I haven't believed in probably the last 6 or 7 years that there's actually global warming. I don't believe that, because I read the scientists who initially talked about global warming, and then I read when he backed up and said, no, this is something that's fluctuating the last 10,000 years, and it's going to go. The same people who talk about global warming are not the same people who are criticizing the war, because obviously 3 years in wars have had to have some sort of effect on our global warming from the perspective of throwing bombs, and we're living in a bubble, in a enclosed bubble. So all that heat is in here. So definitely the heat that all those billions of bombs and tons of bombs have generated are going to affect us. So I think the cost of our groceries we're going to see that within the next maybe 6 months, maybe a year. And I think that a lot of these things that he promised have to be done within the next 2 years before the midterm elections. As you know, the midterm elections are going to happen soon, in 2 years. And if these things aren't done, he's going to lose the power in the Senate and in the House, and he'll be a lame duck, which means that he won't be able to do what he's supposed to do. Now he's got all the power, so there are no excuses. So I think the cost of prices we're going to see in the next few months go down, stabilize, starting from the pump, starting from what happens in the pump, the putting in your gas, and that will put money back in your pocket, and that will put the trucks back into an affordable, and that will hopefully affect everything. That's my answer to that one. You say Kamala and Biden are a crime family, but Trump is literally the only convicted criminal. Okay, great. That's an awesome question. And if you choose not to believe the women who tell the stories, why? Oh, okay. The whole 4 years of Trump, even before he actually continued working, before Trump, before the 2016 Trump, there was already a whole bunch of accusations made. This is a person that comes out of no politics, no background, not a politician. The world, and the political world, is a very controlled atmosphere. What we see, politicians, that's why Trump, the effect of Trump is so incredible, because he's talking like a person that's not from the political sphere, that's not from the world of politics. And because of that, he sounds different. And because of sounding different, some people are not listening. I am from New York. I don't have a problem listening to Trump, because people in New York talk like that and act like that and move their hands like that. So ever since back then, they've been making accusations. This is the person they attempted to kill. And they are the people who are in power, who don't want anyone else, who, except for politicians, to actually be involved in politics, because they can control them, whether that be because they have, you mentioned the Epstein, because they have evidence on these politicians doing horrible things and now they can manipulate them, or because they take money from the Israeli government or Netanyahu, or they have videos and pictures on their kids doing whatever that they can use against them. This is not just a Trump thing. This has been going on. Well, we're going to see the evidence on who killed Martin Luther King. And there's a letter written, maybe you haven't heard this one. There's a letter written by the FBI in the 60s directed towards Dr. King about them knowing, having videos and photos and sounds of him having sexual relationships with women. And they sent him this letter written by Hoover saying that he should kill himself. That's letter, I'm going to see if I find it. And it's a letter that I'll look for it after the next ads. So this letter was written by the FBI towards him. We know of the assassinations of the Martin Luther King. We know the assassinations of the Young Lords. We know the assassinations of the Black Panthers. We know that government has been involved in dirtying, and this is a strategy they've been using for decades. We know that Julian Assange, after releasing the WikiLeaks war evidence and videos and emails on what was going on in Abu Ghraib, was eventually persecuted. We know people like Russell Brand also had accusations of women and improper conduct. And we know a whole bunch of people. So a lot of the stuff that I have seen, we know that Don Pedro Albizu Campos was put in jail with evidence and with information and with videos of people who actually were told to get involved in the movement, in the independentista movement, and from inside create ruckus and friction and conflict with the members inside. We know that the January 6th protests that some people called riots were also full of FBI, CIA, and other agencies. Physically, there were people there who were part of the protest. We know that the committee that investigated this destroyed all the evidence. So this stuff is not new to politics, especially politicians that don't comply or they don't have enough evidence to intimidate. And I think Trump is one of these people who they haven't been able to intimidate. And because they haven't been able to intimidate, whether or not it was true that he had sexual relationships, what it is true is that that had prescribed a long time ago, and they changed the laws. The same thing with what happened in New York with the accusations about him selling properties or not selling properties. The same people who sold him the property, the banks who sold him the property, said this is normal. This is how realty works. But they needed to assume, and they still need to do that today because you're asking it, because they can use that. This is a convicted felon. Here's what we do know: that because of those accusations, even his mugshot was actually the reason why he became president. Because people are disgusted with how the system has been used against people. People are disgusted. I am one who, precisely, if you listen to the Robert Kennedy, the reason why Robert Kennedy included or was part, or is part of the Donald Trump administration, and way back then, the same thing, was because when the Democrats, and here's a fact, if you haven't seen that, please look it up. The Robert Kennedy speech, when he talks about why he's going to back up Trump, and how this just, and that's Robert Kennedy. You know, I'm Raulito from the Bronx, but this is Robert Kennedy, and how he accused the Biden and Kamala people of creating a group, a committee to persecute him, to smut him, to make sure that he didn't become a candidate. And if you know about Bernie Sanders, the same thing happened with Bernie Sanders and the Clintons. And these are just people that have spoken, but we know the same thing with Dr. West. Dr. West, Harvard professor who wanted to run also on the Democratic ticket. And this is how eventually they took over these people, Biden, and then how Kamala came in and they oust Biden. The people behind these candidates are the ones who are doing this. Not Kamala, not Biden, but they're the faces of all of that corruption, all of that crime. So I don't know what happened with this lady. And it doesn't even matter. It doesn't. Because if it mattered, it would have mattered way back then. Not now. Not all this shit that we've seen. I think it's disgusting. So I don't believe that we've seen the end of this. I think there's going to be more stuff. But because there's going to be more stuff, it seems that that's just fuel for people to think that the system is that corrupt. And because it's that corrupt, we need people like Trump. I think Trump's winning is a consequence of all that corruption and all that trying to destroy people and all that legal battles and the billions of dollars they tried to take away from him. All that was what helped Trump become president. I said the mugshot. I'm going to see if I find it. First, I want to look for that letter. Be back in a jiffy.
So this person has been helping us for the last few years. And he also installs lighting, solar lighting. So this is the Christmas special. 100 watts, 100 vatios. I think it's volts. $25, 2 for $40. I can tell you that a lot of the whole community where I live in Puerto Rico, one of the places that I live in Puerto Rico, has a lot of these houses because of the instability of our electrical system have installed these really functional and excellent lighting, and it's absolutely awesome. 787-941-9673, 787-941-9673. I am the tour guide that does tours in the Bronx. We do tours in Old San Juan. We do tours in New York City. We're also going to be doing a special tour coming up the 19th of January, just before the inauguration. Escuela Virtual de los Hermanos Cordero. We have this project. It's a beautiful project. It's been going on for the last 2 years. And what do? Well, we have 10 modules of different it's an educational platform. Let me start off by saying that. And we have 10 different classes using modules that we teach, virtual or mixed modules, that being online or virtual videos that we have designed in Spanish and in English. For example, OBS Studio and Rumble Bootcamp, introduction to cryptocurrencies like blockchain and ledger technology. Los Hermanos Cordero are these 1800s, these self-educated teachers created schools, him and his two sisters. Rafael Cordero is the person you see in the picture.
All right, listen to this.
1964. Efforts to discredit Martin Luther King Jr. are the FBI prepares to send Dr. King an anonymous package containing a document that will come to be known as the Poison Pen Letter.
FBI intelligence chief Bill Sullivan himself takes some plain, unmarked paper and, pretending to be an American Negro, types out an anonymous threatening letter addressed simply King.
The letter began by calling Dr. King a fraud and warned that the demise of his reputation among the public was fast approaching. The package also contained an audio tape, a compilation of FBI surveillance allegedly of King engaging in multiple extramarital affairs. The document's ominous closing, according to some scholars, suggested that Dr. King was given a deadline of 34 days to take his own life or suffer the humiliation of the tape's release.
I'm going to leave that there. This is history. Liz, what you're looking at is history, and not everyone knows about it because it embarrasses a lot of people. So this is the History Channel. You can look this one up. So what are the similarities between Dr. King and Trump? There are very many of them. And people right now are probably having convulsions, because if you think about what has happened to Trump and what happened to Martin Luther King, who eventually was assassinated, and we'll know in the next few days who did the killing and who else was involved. We hope to know, right? Not that the evidence still exists or whatever. We'll see. We'll see. But this is nothing new. I mean, if you're thinking about people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Don Pedro Albizu Campos, and I mentioned to you Black Panthers, Young Lords, creating evidence against Don Pedro Albizu Campos was like the norm. They would hire people to follow him and type out and write down his speeches and alter them. That's absolutely true. So that's the answer to that. Are they lying? I don't know if the women are lying. I don't know what happened with that. But what I do know is that a whole bunch of people who the U.S., not necessarily the U.S. government or certain interests, the same thing with Fidel Castro, the same thing with Bob Marley, the same thing with, the Bob Marley movie. It's a movie, but look at what it said. John Lennon, look at what, there's so many people. And I mentioned Julian Assange, and there's a whole bunch of people who have said this is absolutely true. So don't be surprised if what we have seen, hopefully now we'll see more information on this. And I still do think that Kamala and Biden have conspired to all of this. I think they're part of that swamp that Trump has been talking about. And draining the swamp can cost people's lives. Make sure the door's closed. All right. And I don't choose to believe. That's the evidence that I think it's more than obvious about. What about the Epstein stuff? Yeah, we're gonna hopefully see within the next few months the Epstein stuff and the Didi stuff. Hopefully that we'll see. And you may not believe it, but this is a person that has been persecuted, and I'm talking about, no, I'm not talking about Jesus Christ, no. I'm talking about Donald Trump for more than 20 years. And they haven't found, this is when they talk about, like, there was images of him with Epstein. There's images with Donald Trump and everyone else. I mean, Donald Trump is a Hollywood superstar. That's simple. So yeah, there's got to be images with him with a lot of people. Now, if there's evidence of him with, women or young kids, or is that there? So why haven't they thrown that out there? I'm asking. I don't know. All the children molested and raped. Yeah, there's about 300,000 kids missing that have crossed the border, and they're saying that these kids have been put into pedophile rings. We're going to see this. That's something that we're going to see. And I think that you're insinuating that that Trump had anything to do with that. I can't talk about Trump's sexual habits, but it doesn't seem that way. And I think if there was evidence to that, we would have seen it already. Hey, there's a lot of there's still time. So remember, this is an ongoing thing. My voting for Trump was for a lot of reasons, and one of those very important reasons is because I really found disrespectful to the public what happened with the Democratic Party and how there wasn't democracy, and how what they did to Robert Kennedy and what they did to West and what they did to Bernie Sanders. So there's a lot of reasons beyond Trump. Like I said, Trump is a consequence of all of these things. So I hope that answers that. Stuff like this is the reason why people don't speak out when they are children get touched by any man. No, we need to. The good thing about the laws regarding molestations and pedophiles is that these things don't prescribe, which means you saw some of the cases in the Catholic Church. Some of these people were old as in old, like as in my age, older, and they still sued, and they still, settled out of court or whatever. You still destroyed someone's life when people are damaged and broken that way. So yeah. So it doesn't prescribe. So whoever, and yeah, todavía, if anybody's listening that has been as a social worker, I can tell you this doesn't prescribe, so you can always go back. Yeah. And make the accusations. And people are more keen to listening now than they were 30 years ago or 20 years ago, even 20 years ago. So I never explained, this is another one, I never explained how you want Puerto Rico to decolonize, but you're okay with the 225 U.S. invasion to claim Canada. No. Okay. So Trump has been talking about Greenland and Canada. Trump is a negotiator. And Trump talking about invading Greenland or Canada, I think, are strategies of negotiation. I thought the Gulf of Mexico thing was a joke, but that obviously turned out to be something that he's proposing. Change the maps to say the Gulf of America. The Greenland thing, me as a person who lives or in Puerto Rico, descendants of Puerto Ricans, We are not a property. We are a people. We are a culture. We are a language. We are, and we are not to be sold. That was way back about 500 years ago, 400 years ago, slave. So no, I'm not in favor of Greenland or Canada. And I think that those days are over. I think these are negotiations. These are strategies of negotiation. I don't think that is real. Just like I don't think Puerto Rico can be sold. And if that were to happen, the protest would be out there. I think people are not, this is not the same as, 200 years ago. Colonies are illegal according to the United Nations and to the world. So no, I'm not in favor of neither Canada or Greenland or anyone to be invaded and occupied. The same thing with Ukraine. The same thing with Vietnam. The same thing with Korea. No, I think we are at a moment in time where people can make these decisions. So I think it's a negotiating strategy. I think it worked well. I think it got Trudeau fired, and that's a point for Trump, because the person who's supposed to be going to government now in the Canada nation, it's in his interest because it inclines to his way of thinking. So, yeah. Decolonize U.S. Yeah, so yeah, decolonizing Puerto Rico, obviously yes, and no colonizing or for Canada or Greenland. That's where I'm at with that. And let me tell you something, Liz Marie, I don't have to be in agreement with Trump on everything. Like, we don't have to agree on everything. I don't agree with most of the things that the last 44, and I said most of the things that the last 44 presidents have decided. I believe in some of the things I do agree with and some of the things I disagree with. And again, we're just 4 days from starting. So we'll see how far this goes with the Panama thing, with the Canada thing, with the Greenland thing. It's definitely interesting in what's happening in Israel too. And okay. And what about the student loan plans he also revoked? I think the question you should be asking yourself is, what happened to Biden's promise to pay people's loans, and then how, after winning the midterm, all of that changed. I have a student loan still, and I know many people who have student loans. The argument is that I have a responsibility to pay that loan back because I signed for it. So it would have been great if Biden, made that debt disappear, but he didn't. And he had all the power in the world to be able to pull it off. I don't think Trump ever promised anyone not to repel student debt. So we should be asking Mr. Biden that. No, forget about that. No, Kamala either. No. So we got no one to ask for. I didn't sign up because I knew this would happen. The SAFE program was revoked. I'm paying off my debt, so am I. your cousin forced me to sign up for my cousin. Yeah. She's talking about her mother. Will help me pay for the college, and yeah, I know. I needed to take a loan, so I did. I still owe my loan, and little by little, I need to pay that back. After 20 years later, I'm still paying. Yeah. There's statistics on the majority of the people who take loans end up, even the doctors that end up owing $200,000-$300,000 because of their doctor's degrees and all that stuff that's super expensive. You end up hooked, on having to pay this the rest of your life. And there's even talk about how this is actually a strategy from governments to keep people. Once you have acquired a debt, you'll be paying like a house and a car and a student loan all of your life. So you don't have time to do protests. You don't have time to educate. You don't have time to read. I'm glad you do. I'm glad you do. And I'm glad you have. And I really appreciate the fact that you asked me these questions. I think that was the last one I had. To be biased and true understanding of my $4 as much as more necessary. Okay. Country survival, but not major corporations. I think we're going to have an interesting 2 years. And again, the reason why the 2 years. And I think that the people are going to be. I think these are going to be the most impressive 2 years in modern American history. Why do I say that? Because I think Trump knows he only has these 4 years to be able to do and leave behind legacy. And I think he's a legacy kind of guy. I think he's definitely a legacy kind of guy, as in someone who wants to leave behind, reasons for people to build statues in his honor. By the way, we're asking for a statue in Puerto Rico because all of the other presidents, except for Biden and except for Trump, are there. There's like a walk museum, outdoor museum, where people can see like Obama and all of the presidents, that Bush and all the other presidents that have been to Puerto Rico. Even Kennedy is there. So I hope I've answered your questions. I would welcome you to keep writing and keep paying attention. I'm going to also say that not everything Trump will do will be perfect, but I do believe these next years are going to be very important for the U.S. and for the world. And again, I think the legacy dimension of Trump will help him guide, because he knows the swamp. Now he knows how things work, unlike the first 4 years. And he has explained, I don't know if you saw the Joe Rogan and other interviews where he talked about what happened the first 4 years versus what's the difference now. And he's explained that now he knows how politicians in Washington work and how disgusting they can be. So he's got a dream team of people, of people who think like him, who act like him, who want things to happen like him. Vivek Patel, Elon Musk, Robert Kennedy. I mean, these are people, man, this is a very impressive time in the history of politics in the world. And I think we're gonna really grab the popcorn. So please write back. Yeah, and please, if you need to call me, call me. I love you very much. I'm very proud of you. Thank you for asking me these questions. And I hope I answered them. And if not, let me know so I can go into some deeper. I'm going to investigate Medicare and the Medicaid, and I'm going to investigate the Palestine. I saw that, and I already posted my disappointment on that, the sanctions and removing the sanctions. So you know, I don't know if you saw me post it, but I'm going to be also a critic when needed to be. But I want to be really informed. I don't want to let the corporate media keep lying to me. Corporate media has been lying to me for the last fucking 30 years, literally, and definitely the last 4 years. So, I mean, let me know. Thank you.
So this person has been helping us for the last few years. And he also installs lighting, solar lighting. So this is the Christmas special, 100 watts, 100 vatios. I think it's volts. $25, 2 for $40. I can tell you that a lot of the whole community where I live in Puerto Rico, one of the places that I live in Puerto Rico, has a lot of these houses, because of the instability of our electrical system, have installed these really functional and excellent lighting, and it's absolutely awesome. 787-941-9673, 787. I am the tour guide that does tours in the Bronx. We do tours in Old San Juan. We do tours in New York City. We're also going to be doing a special tour coming up the 19th. Majestic Design. She facilitates a lot of the stuff that we do in Puerto Rico. She helps us by letting us use her facilities. Majestic Design. She makes everything personalized products for businesses and individuals. Anything with cups, cards, web pages, clipboards, and a whole bunch of other stuff. You can Escuela Virtual de los Hermanos Cordero. We have this project. It's a beautiful project. It's been going on for the last 2 years. And what do? Well, we have 10 modules of different it's an educational platform. Let me start off by saying that. And we have 10 different classes using modules that we teach, virtual or mixed modules, that being online or virtual videos that we have designed in Spanish and in English. For example, OBS Studio and Rumble Bootcamp, introduction to cryptocurrencies like blockchain and ledger technology. Los Hermanos Cordero are these 1800s, these self-educated teachers created schools. Him and his two sisters, Rafael Cordero is the person you see in the picture. They were very much part of the history of education, if not just in Puerto Rico, in the whole Caribbean. They were Black, and they were teaching way before the school system was created.
Interpretation of this by the people that investigated, the FBI later, and by just about everybody who has gone through these records, believes that they intended for him to commit suicide.
The FBI sent the package anonymously to Dr. King on November 21st, 1964. But it went unopened for over a month because King was in Oslo, Norway, accepting the Nobel Prize.
The first person to eventually open Sullivan's threatening package long after Christmas is Mrs. King. King and his associates, when they listen to the tape after reading the threatening letter, have no doubt whatsoever that this is from the FBI. King goes into a very deep depression. And of course, the FBI, which is still wiretapping his phones, knows about the discovery of the package and the emotional impact it has on King.
If the FBI believed in early 1965 that their threat would intimidate Dr. King, they would soon find that they were mistaken. In March of that year, he helped lead the civil rights movement's most iconic demonstration in Selma, Alabama. King and other leaders organized a series of marches to demand greater federal protection for the rights of Black citizens to vote. Thousands marched from Selma to the state capital of Montgomery. The first march became known as Bloody Sunday, after a white mob and state police attacked unarmed demonstrators. Five months later, King and his colleagues' strategy of nonviolent protest paid off when President Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965. When President Johnson stood to present Dr. King with another ceremonial pen, he did so with a full knowledge of the compromising information the FBI had gathered on him over the previous 18 months.